Alright everybody, this is part 2 of the Dingoo A320 review. This review is focused on the primary firmware, the standard firmware that comes with the Dingoo. The next video will cover the Linux version of the firmware Dingux, which is made by end users. First up, as you can see, the main screen is completely themable. We've added a Mega Man theme onto the standard firmware. There's quite a few themes out there. Most of them can be downloaded from Dingoo-Digital.com. There's plenty of standard applications that come with it, or that other people have made. This right here is an overclocking utility. Problem is, sometimes the overclocking utility when using TV-Out does occasionally screw up your television screen. However, if you're not using TV-Out, you're fine with it. We're going to reset it real quick, and we're going to go over some of the emulators. Alright, let's check out the emulators. I keep most of my ROMs on the SD card that I've got in there. It's an 8 gig. We're going to start with CPS1. So let's scroll over to the SD. ROMs folder, CPS1 emulator. Start out with Mega Man, why not? Takes a second to load. Then it finally loads up the program. Hit start and select at the same time, brings up the menu system. You can insert a coin. You can also do that by pressing select. Game configuration has whether you can turn raster effects, anti-aliasing on or off, the controller you're using, and of course the volume. It also controls frame skip. Depending on what game you're playing, you might want to turn it on. Now, some games using CPS 1 and 2, there's a little bit of slowdown. It's still very playable, though. Like I said, you can overclock the Dingoo. That way you can actually get normal speed out of it. As you can see with Mega Man, there is some slowdown. However, for the most part, it's very, very playable. That's it for the CPS1. Let's load up something else real quick. Let's check out the Game Boy Advance simulation. Let's load up something like F-Zero. Keep in mind I also changed the loading screen for the Game Boy Advance simulator. The program that patches it can also be downloaded at Dingoo-Digital.com. As you can see, that is excellent with Game Boy Advance. Mode 7, as you can tell, looks absolutely beautiful. Has no problem rotating the screen back and forth. Overall, the Game Boy Advance simulator is probably one of the best ones on there. I'll load up another favorite of mine, the NES simulator. Load up Power Blade real quick. As you can see, because the file sizes are a lot smaller, it loads the games a lot faster. Also, like all other emulators, hit start and select, alter your volume, your button settings. And once again, extremely responsive. Plays most NES titles at 100% full speed. The only one I've seen that hasn't been able to handle at full speed is Castlevania 3. Now for the Neo Geo, load up Metal Slug 5. Of course, we'll tell it we're using a US BIOS. Turn up the volume a little bit. As you can see, there's a little bit of slowdown in the Neo Geo emulator in some games, with Metal Slug 5 being one of them, since it is one of the larger titles, more graphically intensive titles, but at the same time, very playable. Let's load up some from the Sega Genesis era. How about Battletoads? Now, the Genesis emulator, I highly recommend you go to Dingoo-Digital.com and download the updated version, because the standard version has a lot of tearing whenever the screen scrolls. It's fixed with the patched version of the emulator, though, so I highly recommend you go there and download it. And as you can see, the Genesis emulator, for the most part, goes at full speed. There are some games that have a little bit of slowdown, notably Sonic 3, but for the most part, the Genesis emulator also runs at a very good speed. Now, other features of the standard firmware that comes with it are some of the applications that run in it. You've got a music player. I don't have any MP3s or videos loaded up, so I can't show this off too much, but the music player handles MP3s quite well. There are some waves preloaded, so we'll highlight one of them. It does have a nice little graphic EQ that comes up whenever you play a file. There's also a small video player. Videos look excellent. There's also a radio. Has an FM tuner and transmitter. You can go in there and tune any station you want. There is background music also. That way you can load up something from the text reader, which is also available. Listen to music while you're reading a book or something. Okay, let's get out of that. God knows I hate country music. It also has an internal microphone. You can use it to record any kind of voice message you really feel like. It records it in a basic WAV file. It also handles JPEGs if you want to view photos on here. It has a basic flash player for playing SWF files. There's your ebook reader, just reads basic text files. Television settings, you can set the television out for a PAL or an NTSC television set, as well as setting it up for either a 16:9 or 4:3 television. Your browsers, this is the basic browser. It lets you go through your file system on both your SD and your internal 4 gigs of memory. Then finally, the system, you can change your theme out. Set display settings, your font color, the background lighting. Change how long it takes for the background lighting to turn off. Whether it has an automatic off, which will automatically turn the system off after so much time. Speaker levels. So overall, that's pretty well it for the original firmware. I didn't go through every feature in detail like the video and the text reader. However, YouTube gives us a 10-minute limit, and mostly what we care about in this handheld are the emulators. Text reading, video playing, everything like that. To me, it's just a bonus. Overall, definitely worth it just for the original firmware that comes on it. But the big bonus on this thing is Linux. Linux has enabled awesome support of better games, higher quality emulators in my opinion, versions of MAME, great PC ports like Doom, Quake, great original games, and we'll be going over all of that in the next video. See you then.